Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Brinsley Ernst Pieter Schwarz is an English guitarist, most recognized for his work with the band taking his namesake, Brinsley Schwarz. Brinsley has also played piano, organ, provided vocals from time to time throughout his career. Beginning as pop band Kippington Lodge in 1965, the band morphed into pub rock unit Brinsley Schwarz, and from 1969 to 75 released 6 albums. In the years following the breakup, there have been several compilations released. Brinsley joined the Rumour, the band that went on to success backing Graham Parker. Mr. Schwarz continued his affiliation with Graham Parker, recording and playing live, including a 2016 tour. And there are 2 solo albums to date, 2016's Unexpected and 2021's Tangled. Well, welcome, Brinsley.
Hi. It's very nice, thank you.
So, Brinsley, you were born in Hove, which is near Brighton, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you recall your childhood, your upbringing there?
No. What I remember very faintly is being put out. So the house my parents bought was on the seafront, more or less, and they used to leave me in my pram by the front garden, where I'd really enjoy the sound of the waves crashing, and I put my love of the sea down to that. I was just there for, I think that was probably like a year and a quarter when I was a baby, but I don't remember anything, of course.
No, not a
and we moved. My parents moved around a lot, okay. So yeah, so mainly in Kent and Sussex, which are in the southeast of England.
Okay, how about your memories of Sussex?
I didn't really remember anything. So I went to boarding school, which is where Woodbridge comes from. I went to a boarding school in Woodbridge, which is in Suffolk, and which I didn't enjoy at all, and left as soon as I could.
Okay.
And by the time I got to any kind of meaningful school, I just wanted to be a guitar player. So I was just biding my time till I was 18, when I could leave school and go and play guitar. And
what were some of your earliest influences? What kind of music and bands that you were into?
Just about so in England, it wasn't really like it was, or I suppose like it was in America. Young people's music wasn't split up into a whole lot of genres in those days. It was all pop music, which, if you were lucky, you heard on BBC Radio 1. There wasn't much else until the pirate radio stations started up. But so I liked to listen to Elvis a lot. The Shadows, who were an English instrumental band, who were completely responsible for me wanting to be a guitar player. I heard Hank Marvin play and thought, I want to do that.
Is that right? Okay.
That was it as far as I was concerned. And so there was everything: James Brown, Motown, rock and roll, the Stones, Freddie and the Dreamers, everything, all in one thing. And you just listened to, you bought what you wanted to buy. There were record shops where you could buy vinyl, and you saved up and went and bought the latest Stones singles or the Beatles. Everybody. You just listened to everybody because it was all the same thing.
Yeah, can you remember one of your first single or first album that you got?
The first record I had was called Green Door, which I was by an English Frankie, somebody, I can't remember his name now. It was like a 50s big band song. And then Elvis arrived, and so I bought everything that Elvis
Oh,
But I went to see all the movies, dreadful as they all are, or most they are. But I was an Elvis Presley fan, like everybody else. And then obviously the Beatles, huge fan of the Beatles, and the Beach Boys.
okay. The harmonizing. Yeah, with that.
Yeah, well, yes, that. And so nowadays we know quite a lot about how some of those records were made. It's not a mystery.
Right.
But in 1963, it was how do they do that?
Right.
Yeah, and so it was all incredibly interesting. And some of the Beach Boys records are just beautiful.
Right.
There is a thing which I don't know if it's true or not, that the Beach Boys finished. So there you go. I forgot what the thing. What's their best album? The Beach Boys.
Oh, Pet Sounds.
Pet Sounds, yes.
Yeah.
So they just finished that, and Sergeant Pepper arrived on the doorstep, and that kind of did Brian Wilson head in, because he was trying to make the best album ever, and
Right.
somebody else did it beat him to it. But I don't know if that's true. The one thing that I do know is that there was always, amongst fans, Hendrix is better than Clapton. No, Clapton's better than Hendrix, and so on. And Beck, and that sort of group of amazing guitar players who are supposedly better than the others.
Right.
So better at what? Are they faster? Do they know more jazz? What do they? Why are they better? And they're just all great guitar players. That I've always thought that was enough.
Funny to argue about that. Can you remember the first or one of the first concerts that you attended?
Oh yes, the first one would have been the Shadows,
okay,
by themselves without Cliff Richard, at the local opera house, Tunbridge Wells Opera House. They were blindingly good and fantastic, and that just made me want to be a guitar player even more. And then after that, I think Cream were probably the next band I saw in Brighton, in a big place in Brighton.
Right. Talking about the Shadows being such an influence. So you were self-taught on guitar?
Yeah, my parents bought me a Spanish guitar, which was just what I wanted, and said that if I could still play it and was still interested by Christmas, they might consider buying me an electric guitar. So I could play Apache by 5 o'clock in the afternoon on my birthday. I couldn't play the chords, but I could play the tune. I just thought they sent me to a piano teacher who lived down the road, who taught me stuff that I wasn't really interested in. And
right, I've heard those
Shadows, yes, that's what I played, and then Beatles songs.
Yeah, I've heard those stories about taking classical lessons and not really being your cup of tea, being the cup of tea. So how did you talk about how you and Nick Lowe first met?
We were both students at Woodbridge Public School.
Okay.
So he was in another house, but that's how we met. And we used to. It was a boarding school, although there were local day boys there as well. And we used to sneak out of dormitory to meet up in the hall, which had a stage and a room underneath the stage. So we used to go down there, like in the middle of the night, and jam anything with anybody who turned up. We used to drink a lot of cider. People smoked a lot, and we played rock and roll. Yeah. All rock and roll. We hardly ever played anything else. We just played rock and roll. And we never got caught. And and we'd have been in serious deep shit if we'd been caught, but we never did. And it was really nice to raise two fingers, whichever way round you raise them, to the school, and it's horrendous. It was a horrendous place, brutal bullying, just horrendous. And so at some point I was just beginning in the fifth form, and I was going to be a prefect, and then by halfway through that term, so many people left that I was going to be head of house, and that meant that I would be responsible for beating little kids for doing something like running in the corridor or something ridiculous, and I would have to beat them, which is what happened to me. I got beaten along with Nick and everybody else because it was the 60s and that's what he did. So I left.
Yeah, I would have too. I'm with you there for sure. I couldn't do that. No. Well, was Sounds 4+1, was that your first band?
That was, oh God, I don't remember that. I thought we were Sounds 4+2. The school band was Sounds 4+2. We had two singers, one who was a Mick Jagger alike, and the other one who was a Buddy Holly alike, and the four of us played rock and roll behind them. And Nick's father was an Air Force group captain who on a base in Germany, an American base in Germany, and he arranged a tour for us. Well, this is when we were 15 and 16, and to go and play in the different clubs that were on the base. It was a big place, and my parents had a little, don't know what do you call them, a sleeper van thing. What do you call them in the States?
Mm-hmm.
A rig. A truck where you could sleep and cook and stuff like that.
A van,
yeah, a van.
Okay.
They're called something else, I can't remember. Anyway, they had one of those and we all piled into that. A bit like the movie Hot Summer Holiday, which I don't know if you ever saw that. Probably a good idea to steer clear, but yes. We went on holiday and played in these places.
Okay. So
that was my first. That would be the first. But then I didn't do anything until I left school at 18, and a local bass player, heard that I played guitar and said, "Do you want to join the band?" So I said yes.
Yeah.
And that was Three's a Crowd.
Three's a crowd. Okay.
Yeah. Dreadful name.
And then which became Kippington Lodge, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What was the original lineup in Kippington Lodge?
That was me. Dave Cotton was the bass player. Pete Whale was the drummer. And then later, well, I think it was later, Barry Landerman, who was also at Woodbridge, came and joined as Hammond organ player.
Okay.
He went on to join a pop group called Vanity Fair.
Oh, yeah.
And we advertised and got Bob Andrews. And that band pretty much straight away, I think, I don't know, became Brinsley Schwarz.
Okay.
But it became the Brinsley Schwarz band to start.
Oh, okay. That's what it was known as. Well, from Kippington Lodge, I like the track "Shy Boy." I think that's probably my favorite one, if you can remember that one.
Yeah. Okay. So that was written by Keith West of Tomorrow. Nothing to do with us. We were given a demo of the song, and we went home and practiced solidly for 3 weeks. Then went up to Abbey Road, Studio One, where we met Mark Wirtz, who was the producer, and he played us the backing track that they'd recorded with all of the best Abbey Road studio musicians, Nicky Hopkins and people like that. And all they wanted was me to sing it. So I sang it 3 times. They put 3 of me on the record, and then we recorded the B-side, which I wrote in one take. They put a couple of mics up, and we just played, and they said, "Okay, that's it." And that's how that came about.
Yeah. How was the experience in the recording studio in the early days?
Well, it was a mystery for a start, and it was over very quickly. So we went home pretty disgruntled because we hadn't played on much, and so yeah, we look forward to the next one, and then the next one exactly the same thing happened. And it wasn't until our 5th single that they allowed us to make the record ourselves.
Okay.
And that didn't do any better. So Shy Boy was a radio hit. It was played all the time on BBC and the rest of it. But that seemed like the public thought that was enough.
Yeah.
So they didn't go and buy it.
After that.
After the 4 of us, that's Dave Cottam, Pete Whale, myself, and Barry Landerman, were a band. That's the band that Dave Cottam left.
Okay.
Dave Cottam and Pete Whale left, and Nick replaced Dave Cottam.
Okay. Okay.
And then we started to go down a very different road.
Right. So Nick was real receptive to the idea right off the bat.
Yeah, I think he wanted to be in a band.
Yeah.
And we all knew each other, so and my parents once again stepped in and let them stay in our house.
Oh, okay.
My parents are responsible for a lot of this because they looked after us really well. So.
All right. Were either one of your parents musically inclined at all? I didn't.
My mother was did stuff in Hollywood.
Okay.
She was Cinderella in a Cinderella performance up in London. She was on her way to getting somewhere. She could dance, sing, and be acrobatic. And she had an accident on a bus that badly cut her shin. And so she lost the opportunity. She couldn't do anything for about 1.5 years, I think.
Okay.
And, so she lost the opportunity. My dad didn't play anything, although he liked music. But his father was very musical as well, very classically musical.
Okay, gotcha. Well, how did you guys meet Ian Gom, or how was he? How did he join the band?
We decided we could do with another guitar player, second guitar player, and advertised. And then we had 9 people came up to the house. We were all living together by this time. 9 people came up to the house, and Nick and Bob decided on Ian before any of us talked to him. We played, and then Nick said, "Okay, well, you're in," without anything. It was kind of like that. Yeah, so we advertised for him, but we advertised for Bob as well, and we advertised for Dave Robinson. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, there are different stories about what would be called the Brinsley Schwarz hype. How do you remember things?
How long have you got? Okay, well, I'll try to do this quickly. Okay.
Okay. Sure.
our managers, as we changed the name from Kippington Lodge to Brinsley Schwarz, as that happened, we also decided we needed a different kind of management. And the only way you did anything in those days, we put an advert in the Melody Maker. So we put an ad in the Melody Maker, and almost, I think it was the first week, there was this ad for looking for a band. Something like adventurous management seek band with own gear and can write songs. We had our own gear, we could write songs, and we were looking for a manager, so we called up. Apparently there were 80 odd people, and Dave came, different bands. Dave came to see all of them, I think, and came down to see us twice, and picked us. His company, which was called Fame Pushers, what he talked about, so he'd had experience touring with Jimi Hendrix, and managing an Irish band called Heir Apparent, and he had loads of great stories. He's Irish. He tells great stories, and we were just entranced by it, especially the fact that he kind of second tour managed. He was Hendrix's tour manager assistant on a long tour, and so had loads of Hendrix stories as well. So he became our manager. His idea was to get a young band who could write songs. That was the important thing for him. And we'd try to get to play in better places, try to move forward slowly without causing any trouble or anything, and hopefully get a record deal, and then go on a tour and gradually build up. So his company was involved with several other companies which were overlooked by this one guy, Eddie Moulton was his name, who was a financial person. There was a guy who wanted to be a film director, who did filming stuff. There was Forbidden Fruit, which is a cool clothes store in London West End. There was Barney Bubbles, who he did album covers, and he became famous album covers. He was one of them. And what this financial bloke did was, whenever one of the companies made 200 quid, which was a reasonable amount of money there, he took the £200 and paid it into all of the bank accounts. So for 3 days, everybody had £200 to spend. And then at the end of the 3 days, before the checks got called in, somebody else would earn 200 quid, and then that would go and pay for the thing, and everyone had £200 for another few days. I think this is called kite flying. At the time, and that's what happened, and that was responsible later on for our disasters. So the idea of slowly building up wasn't working, and so Dave said, okay, what we need is a splash. We need to make a splash, grabs people's attention, which is what everybody else was doing. And so the splash had to be a little bit different and a little bit special, because everybody else had been doing that. So they asked the record companies to come down and spend a lot of money on their drinks bill, so they can see you play in a nightclub somewhere. That was the thing mostly. But we wanted to do, or they wanted to do, something a little bit more than that. And the idea came up that we would fly free of charge major music media people from Heathrow to New York, where they would get front row seats to watch us play at the Fillmore East. So that was a great idea. Everyone thought, yes, that sounds like a really good idea. We'll be going to America as well. Yay. So first of all, Dave had to get the gig. Then he had to get a record company to pay for it, the whole trip, and an agent in both countries.
Mhm.
So the first thing was to get the gig. So he, on one Friday afternoon, he calls up Bill Graham in his office in New York and says, we've got a band in England. They've made a record. We want to come and play at the Fillmore East, and we're going to fly the world's press to see the band. And Bill Graham obviously thought, okay, here's somebody who's, we call them barking mad, so who's lost the plot, and said to Dave, okay, send me the tape and I'll give it a listen and get back to you. Monday morning, when Bill Graham walked into the office, Dave Robinson was sitting waiting for him. And so Bill Graham said, hello, what can I do for you? And they said, I've called you on Friday. You said to give you the tapes of my band. We want to come and play and fly the world's press. Here's the tapes. And Bill Graham took the tapes and looked at them and said, it's okay, I don't need the tapes. You got the gig. It's, that's fine. What amazing. And so we got the gig. From that moment on, pretty much everything that you could imagine that could go wrong did go wrong. And the result of that was that not only were our drummer then, Billy Rankin, he had dual citizenship, so he flew to America on the appointed day. So we were playing Friday and Saturday. The band was supposed to go on Tuesday, have a night off, and then practice on stage with our gear for the next 3 days, and then played the 2 gigs, 2 shows a night, Friday and Saturday. So our gear got there, Billy got there, and the rest of us failed to turn up. And the reason we failed to turn up was because in those days you had a musicians union exchange thing. So we had to find 3 American musicians who were coming to England looking for an exchange, and Love were the 3 the 3-member band. But Arthur Lowe, is it? Arthur Lee, the singer.
Yeah.
He got laryngitis. So they had to cancel, and they cancelled, which meant we didn't have an exchange anymore. Nobody told anybody about it. And on the day we went to get our visas, Monday before the Tuesday we were supposed to be flying, we were supposed to pick up our visas for the American embassy. We were turned down because we didn't have union permission to go and play in America. And so Dave, who was really good at these things, said, okay, we'll go to Canada and we'll try from Canada. They'll let us in, don't worry. So we all changed the flights, flew to Canada, and we got a 1-day stay. So we got visas to stay in Canada for a day. So Dave said, we holed up in a hotel. So we sat in the hotel for, as it turned out, 3 days, while Dave went and spoke to people who would speak to people and speak to people who would know maybe a senator or something like that, who for a small consideration would get us our visas, which is what happened. Meanwhile, Billy was sitting in New York by himself, had a driver, had an experience with a guy who got knifed outside the hotel right in front of him, and decided that going out in New York by himself was probably not a good idea, so he went back to his room, where he stayed for the entire 3 days. We were frightened that we'd get picked up on the street, asked to show our ID and visas, everything, in which case ours would have been run out on the second day, and we get kicked out of Canada as well. So we stayed in the hotel, where we were supplied with multiple versions of Star Trek, which we'd never ever seen. So we watched Star Trek, and there were other substances, including pizzas and various other things that keep us happy. And then on Friday morning, we went down to the American Embassy in Toronto, where we'd already been and refused by this guy who was really pissed off with the fact that we'd lied about being turned down in London. He didn't like us at all. He didn't like our long hair. He didn't like us. And we had to go and see him again
Oh,
And so the first time we saw him, he said to us, "I've got $1 million worth of computer back here that tells me that you guys were turned down for your visas in America 2 days ago. And on the visa, you answered the question, have you ever been refused a visa in the United States by saying no? That was a lie. You want to go to the US of A? No chance." And he threw our papers across the table. So when we came back 3 days later, he was also not very. Our visas were okayed from on high, so he had to do it. So he did it. He got our papers out and put them just inside his glass thing, partition, and called our numbers and said, "Your visas will be ready in 3/4 of an hour." And he closed his thing and went to lunch. So they were there, but he wasn't going to give them to us until he had to. And that was after lunch. So after lunch, he gave us the visas, we left. Now, this is, I can't remember the times exactly, but 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday that we were on stage at 7 o'clock. Right. So we had 6 hours, 5 hours to get to the Fillmore, get on stage and remember what on earth we were supposed to be doing there. So we got, so the problem there was that there was a ground crew strike on the northeastern coast of the USA. Everybody grounded, so no planes out. So we managed to get this little Piper 5-seater, which we jumped in and had a very interestingly piloted flight. And the funny thing was that halfway through, when landed at a little air ground in Buffalo, just inside the USA, and we all got out of our visas and passports out, and he said, so don't worry about that, I'll just say you're a businessman. So had we known that you could fly in a little plane from Toronto to Buffalo and get into the USA by the pilot just saying you're just businessmen, we wouldn't have had to go through all of this stuff. So we didn't use our visas. So anyway, in we go. We were met by 3 limousines, taken to the Fillmore. The limousines were amazing. The music was terrific. The DJ didn't say anything for half an hour, and then after half an hour he'd say, "You just listen to so-and-so by Hendrix, so-and-so by Dylan, so-and-so by James Brown, so-and-so." And it was just fantastic. We couldn't believe it's so different in the States. And then we were on stage. The press, on the other hand, they all landed or went to Heathrow Airport, where they were passed through customs into the pre-boarding area, where the only thing that was available there was alcohol. So they were already beginning their journey in their fashion. And what happened was that the Aer Lingus 707 that Dave Robinson had managed to hire broke down. Coming from Ireland to Heathrow, it had developed a landing gear fault, which had to be fixed. That took 3 hours. They took off again. They got everybody on board finally, took off, and the landing gear developed the fault again. So they had to land again in Ireland, in Shannon Airport, where there was only a bar. And then after 3 hours, they got fixed again, and they took off and flew to States. So they were supposed to be met by 18 Cadillac limousines, and I think it was a 16 police motorbike guard thing that went whooping through the city.
Like a motorcade.
A motorcade. Yeah. So it was, it looked and could have been the president, but was our press. Anyway, they were late by now, quite a lot late. So it was a race. 3 of the Cadillacs never made it. They had big pile-ups, nobody hurt. I think a couple of the police had a problem with motorbikes. some of them were so out of it that they obviously talking in one of them. Do we really have to go? We just ask somebody about how this went. Let's go back to the hotel, have a few drinks, and go to bed. So a lot of them didn't even try to turn up. But what was supposed to happen was we bought the front 3 rows at the Fillmore that was supposed to be reserved for our press people, including cameramen. So the Fillmore East had a no cameras deal. If you couldn't take one into the cinema, but we got special permission for the press cameramen to be allowed in. So come whatever time it was, 6 o'clock, say, the front 3 rows are filled with ordinary people who come in. No one said this is reserved. They just were allowed to sit where they sit. All the bouncers said, yeah, okay, well, the Brinsley people must be in all right, but it's all full up, so no more cameras. So some of the cameramen who are trying to get their cameras in, including, I believe, either the Times or the Mirror's chief head cameraman, got his camera smashed by the bouncers. And so that didn't go very well. And I guess quite a few people said, okay, enough, I'm going back to the hotel. We played the first set, which was pretty dire because we were extremely nervous and had a serious misadventure. I couldn't hear anything because my ears didn't pop when I flew in. And then we were off back to the dressing room and sit their head in hands and looking at each other and thinking, God, what is going on? And so the next band on after us was Van Morrison.
Okay.
So we'd been in the dressing room maybe 10 minutes, and Nick came in the dressing room and said, come on, you got to see this. You've really got to see this. So we all got up and went down and watched Van Morrison. And there began the first little seed of, holy shit, we're really not good enough for this. These people this is just ridiculously good. Mm-hmm. So we watched Van Morrison's 4 shows over the 2 days, did our best. Actually, the last show wasn't too bad, and we got applause from the audience. And, we ended up thinking, okay. And on the way home, we thought, right, okay, how can we get to play every day all together? And the answer to that was to get a house. And that's what we did. We got back, we got a house together, a big house. And where we all lived, and we played for 8 or 10 hours a day, people playing all the time. Local people came round to say hi and hang out. It became like a little bit of a commune thing. Okay. And then we started making the second album.
Okay.
And that's what happened at the Fillmore.
What an adventure, or misadventure, I guess.
A misadventure, yeah.
Yeah, misadventure.
The worst part of it was Billy. He got to his hotel. The driver was really friendly and said, I am in room so-and-so. If you want anything, just give me a call. I'll be right there. So after 20 minutes, Billy's jet lagged and doesn't want to be in his hotel room. So he calls him up and says, go downstairs, wait downstairs outside. I'll go get the car. I'll be there in 10 minutes. So Billy's waiting for the car outside the hotel, standing against the wall. Another car turns up, 3 guys get out, and one of them knifes the guy who's standing next to Billy in the guts, and they run off and drive away. So Billy's standing there, and there's a guy with a knife in his belly. And and he didn't spend any time out. He just did his hotel room.
Not after that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time that story's come out.
I've told it a few times. But anyway, yes.
Okay. No, I was going to say, when did you first notice or take notice of Eggs Over Easy?
Okay, so I guess it was something like a year after that. It might have been No, it must have been at least a year after that happened. Summer 72, I think. We got better gigs after the Fillmore fiasco. We did get better gigs and some press. Most of it wasn't good to start with. It was very overstated how much money it had cost us, but it did cost us a lot of money because the financial guy, he gave everybody checks, including a very, very large one for himself, and then disappeared. So with our money. So anyway, I think Dave and Nick went out into town. They went to this pub, the Tally Ho, in northwest London, and saw this band, Eggs Over Easy. Came back and said, "Come on, we've got to go and see him next week. We'll go see him because this is a good idea." And so that's what we did. Next week, we all went down to see Eggs Over Easy. Thought they were really great, and that's what we should be doing. So we carried on doing the gigs that we had to do, but then pretty much stopped for a bit while we all delved into music. We'd already kind of started that, but watching Eggs Over Easy kind of route. We had a really good guy in the record company who we would phone up and say, "Get us anything by or related to so and so." And so this wasn't because of Eggs Over Easy, but we wouldn't have known about the people involved if it hadn't have been for Eggs Over Easy, really. But Robbie Robertson did an interview in the Melody Maker, and the one good question that the guy asked him was, "What does the band listen to when you're relaxing?" And Robbie Robertson said, I've forgotten his name now. Lee Dorsey.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So Robbie Robertson said Lee Dorsey, to which I suspect nobody paid a blind bit of notice except for us.
Okay.
And we phoned up our guy in the record company and said, right, everything by Lee Dorsey and related to. So we got a couple of days later, we got a packet of albums, some Lee Dorsey, some Alan T. Saint, Professor Longhair, all of that New Orleans, Meters, all of that stuff, which took us off down another backwards road.
Right.
Clifton Chenier was there, who was a southern accordion player. You know, that sort of French influence in the South.
Asian.
And even a band called Redbone, who we loved. They were heavy without being heavy rock. They were just a rhythm of it, was heavy.
Yeah, and if you heard that song, if you heard their music, you would think it was a black group. Never dawned on most people until they actually saw them.
Yeah.
They really had a lot of soul. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So your sophomore album, which you brought up a little bit ago, Despite It All, 1970, is probably my all-time favorite Brinsley Schwarz track, Country Girl. That's such a great song. Yeah, it just stays in your head for a long
Forever.
time. Yes.
Yes. Forever.
Yeah.
So we opened shows with that for the rest of our existence as the band.
Yeah.
Nothing else seemed to be right to open it. It was our signature. People would look, oh, it's the Brinsleys. So yes, but like everything that you play over and over again, you lose.
Right.
Lose the love for it a bit.
You get tired of it after a while.
Yeah.
I would say that, I would think that musicians being asked to play the same songs in concert, you really get bummed out after a while having to do that.
Well, one of the things about that is that when you're on stage performing to a an audience who have come to see you because of something that most people go out and see bands that they know, they bought records of, know them in some way. So, and unless you're known for being a that will play the song for 30 seconds and then jam for half an hour, so unless you're cream, then it's pointless trying to do that. You do that at home. So we used to jam James Brown riffs for like 3 hours without changing anybody. Everyone would just be locked in to the beat, and we just carry on. And then at some point, somebody would change one note, and the whole thing would sort of shift round. Everyone was very tuned into everybody else. We're in a circle. You can hear everything. You notice every little thing that goes on. But when you're on a big stage, or when you're on any kind of stage, you can't do that. You can't hear those things. That you have to be in the right mood for it. So there's only been one occasion where we played what we play every night at home. We would play jamming stuff, but it wouldn't be based on long guitar solos or anything. It'd be based upon being in the rhythm, making locked in with everybody, so that it was a powerful thing moving, off by itself. And that only ever happened to us once live.
Right. What was the audience? The audience reaction? Do you remember?
Well, yes, I remember it pretty well. It was a gig in Frankfurt in Germany. It was at the end of what was one of the worst touring experiences we'd ever had, from stuff not working, from cars breaking down in the middle of nowhere, of being too out of it. All kinds of things did not go well. But we played, Frankfurt was the last gig at the Zoom Club in Frankfurt. And we decided, the audience were mostly sitting down. Everyone was stoned. The air was thick with it. Everyone just lying down. So we thought, well, okay, this is what the audience are going to be doing. Then why don't we play? We used to do this little country instrumental that I'd written, a little shadowsy thing. We'll play that, and then we'll jam Nicky Hokey. And Nicky Hokey was a song by Jim Ford that we used to jam in the style of Redbone a bit. So we would just head off into it. Everyone would, however the song finished, wherever that was, it would just head off doing the same thing. So we played that for 44 minutes, at which point our 45-minute set was up. The audience was still lying on the floor. Nobody was moving. Everybody was just hanging out, lying on the floor. And so somebody nodded at somebody, and we finished and stopped and said, "Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you in 20 minutes. And the place went wild. And I was sort of, blimey, what's that about? So we made it back to the dressing room, and Dave came in and said, "I'm sorry, but they want to come and say hello, all of them. And do you want to say hello?" We said, "Yeah, fine." So they all came in. All of these guys from all over America. There were black guys from Detroit, people from the South. There were people in the Midwest. They're from all over, and they were kept together by one thing. They were all U.S. Air Force. Okay. So there was a big base. They came out, and they were all grooving, hugging us, saying, "It's just like being at home. You guys are great. Are you doing more?" It was one of those. So we played a few songs, James Brown, and jammed off into the. That's the only time it ever.
Wow.
happened.
Well, so you no more thoughts about trying that again, huh?
No, because it requires us it requires a special. It's a special moment.
Yeah.
You can't turn those. That's one of the things that people don't understand. Is you cannot turn things on and off
Right.
necessarily.
It was impromptu.
Apart from anything else, you play one gig where the keyboard player who's on that side of the stage says, "What a fabulous gig that was," and over your side of the stage, really, that was pretty dull. That's awful. It's horrible ringing in the feet, in the monitors, and everything. And that's one of the things. When you're in a band, you kind of have to stay to what everybody knows because you can't hear it, what everybody's doing. In any case, half the time. So you just try to make everything as good as you can possibly make it without straying off. And which I did do once when I was first given a substance which I won't mention, and I got to the end of my first solo and just carried on soloing, and Nick started singing. I thought, wait, I'm playing. Never mind the singing, we're playing. I'm playing. Shut up. And they never let me have any of that again. So
never. Got to keep that away from you. That's funny. Well, moving along, Nightingale from 1972, Silver Pistol. I think that's a really nice track. I really enjoyed that one. It's one I go back to, time and time again. And then mentioning the Shadows, you talked about the influence the Shadows have on me. Rocking Chair. Yeah, that definitely harkens back to that instrumental guitar era.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things about the instrumental guitar area is that amongst guitar players, anyway, Hank Marvin, the Shadows are not. How to put it? They're not everybody's favorite. They're to some extent, sometimes a big extent, looked down upon because they're not playing the blues, they're not playing jazz, they're not playing rock. They're playing little tunes. A lot of the tunes are from movies. But you try and do it. You try and sound like he does, and there's a long-standing, massive attempt by lots of guitar players, especially in this country, who have tried all their life to sound like Hank Marvin, and they don't. And so I'm one of them. I've spent all my life since I heard Apache trying to sound like that, not necessarily trying to sound like it on stage, but just trying to sound like it. Can't do it. And the nearest I got was more recently we did and I'd given up, by then trying to sound like Hank Marvin. But we did a show. I can't remember his name now either. TV show live with Jules Holland, a few years back, and one of the songs was a song that I played a Strat and played a clean-ish solo, and just before we went on, while we were waiting to go on, I suddenly had this flash of me taking off my Les Paul and putting my Strat on, the cables getting twisted up, and I would trip over and bump into Andrew, who would fall over into the drum kit, who would knock Martin over, and who would crash into Graham. It would be a complete disaster. So I thought, right, I'm just going to use the Les Paul, and it'll sound like it sounds. Now, potentially, if you want to sound like Hank Marvin, you need a Stratocaster. And I was going to play the solo with a Les Paul. Sounded more like Hank Marvin than I've ever sounded. So it's not to do with the instruments, it's to do with these things.
I tell you, I'll tell you another band, and this was Joe Meek trying to take advantage of that Shadow sound, was the Outlaws with Richie Blackmore, in his early days. Yeah, that's another one that's, it's similar, and it's got that Joe Meek production.
Yeah.
On there.
But there was another, when I was a kid, there was a singer called Shane Fenton, who changed his name later on and had hits. but he was Shane Fentone and the Fentones.
Yeah.
And the Fentones recorded The Breeze and I, which was a well-known guitar-y instrumental. Fantastic, really fantastic record. Somehow they got it to be really loud. So it's like really loud, great guitar playing. Lovely record.
Yeah. There's some good instrumental bands from that era, you know.
Yeah.
The Ventures were, I mean, a little more commercial sounding, but you know, from over here. The same year, Nervous on the Road was released. Surrender to the Rhythm. That's a fun song. It must have been a live favorite. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, and it was copied a few times as well by people.
I can hear in that song. I can hear the genesis of Nick Lowe's future material. I can hear that starting to come out a little bit.
I thought, well, yes. So, sort of knowing him and being involved, I think that formulated a little bit later, because after, so we were going down this vaguely R&B as in what it was then, not what it is now. Right. So Surrender to the Rhythm was a little bit of an R&B flavor to it, and there were songs later. Cruel to Be Kind, that they're not R&B at all, but that's more like what he moved to.
Right. Yeah. The also like Brand New You, Brand New Me. That's another top track, I think, from that album. How did you get to open for Paul McCartney and Wings on their '73 UK tour?
So how did we what?
How did you get to open for Paul McCartney and Wings on their '73 tour?
Okay. Dave Robinson knew and was a friend of Henry McCulloch, and when they were talking about who should open for them, Henry mentioned us. Then there was some stuff with Dave, meeting them, and then he came down to the Hard Rock Cafe in Marble Arch to see us play a sort of audition. Really good for the nerves, you know, knowing that you could be backing Paul McCartney if you played a good gig. But anyway, he came down and we were having a good gig. He hadn't arrived yet, but we saw him arrive and go to his tables. And after about 5 minutes, this guy in a very snazzy suit appears in front of me. I'm playing and singing backing vocals, and he says something which it took me a couple of times. I said, "What?" And he says, I get it in the end, that Paul is ready to play now.
Okay.
So I said, that's nice. Tell Paul he'll be more than welcome to play when we've finished. He can use any of our stuff he wants to. He can use any of us that he wants to, but he'll have to wait until we've finished because this is our gig.
Right.
And the guy said, "No, you don't understand. I'm Paul's manager and he wants to play now." So I said, "I don't give a fuck who you are. Paul McCartney can play when we've finished." Okay, right. Do you get that? It's in English. Right. And he sort of threw his arms up and then went off, and then came back and went through the same thing. And I said, "Yeah, great, okay, go away," which he did. And Nick was asking me what's going on, and I said an expletive-loaded sentence telling him what had happened, and he said, "Yeah, right on." So we carried on. We carried on playing, and got the gig.
Yeah.
So turning down Paul McCartney's supposed desire, you know, I think it's just the manager trying to be a big man, you know. Right. You recognize the thing. I don't think Paul McCartney would ask a band to stop mid-set so he could play, and just knowing Paul McCartney a little as I do, I know that that wasn't Paul McCartney's wish.
That wasn't him. No.
Yeah, it was not him. And I didn't know him then. I got to know him a little bit better later. But yes.
No, that was the manager.
Yeah, it was or not, or maybe even just the guy who looked after him when he, when he went out for the night.
Yeah. Back to Shane Fenton, Alvin Stardust.
That's right. Alvin Stardust was Shane Fenton and the Fentones.
Yes. So taking us to 1973's Please Don't Ever Change. That's a nice album, I think, all the way around. I like the reggae, ska, rock steady sound of Why Do We Hurt the One We Love?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Introducing that kind of sound into that into the mix. And then I like the gospel heavy organ sound on I Worry About You Baby. I like that.
Okay, that's actually really like somebody else's record. I can't remember now. But it's kind of like a Beatles song with the heavy guitar hit on the snare shot. A John Lennon song.
Right. A lot of the music from Brinsley Schwarz, the band, does sound like older tracks, like covers, but they're not covers. But you know what I mean? There's a lot of influence, and it's like this sounds like it could be a throwback to a 60s song, early.
Yeah, we would. The band was just playing stuff that it liked playing. At some point, the people were saying that we were a lot like another American band called Clover, from where came some serious guitar player who was really good, played with Grateful Dead, I believe. Yeah, I don't think we cared.
Yeah.
Where we weren't lifting stuff on purpose. Nick was just writing songs, and we would just play them, right, and enjoy what we enjoy.
Yeah. The other track off of that album that has that south of the border style with the Spanish guitar, Down in Mexico. That's another.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you should have heard. You should have heard. You Can't Take It Back on Tangled. That song is about stuff that you let loose either into the atmosphere or out of your mouth.
Right.
And once it's gone, you can't take it back. It's gone. Right. So you better be right about what you're doing. So it's potentially about genetically modified food. That's what I'm writing about.
Right. Just like the bullet, like you said, the bullet once it's left the chamber.
Yeah, once it's gone, there's no you can't catch it up and say no, I didn't mean that.
That's right.
It's
that's
out there. It's gone.
Well, that's coming up. Moving on to the new favorites from '74. That was produced by Dave Edmunds. How did you wrangle him in as producer?
So this is a little bit down to Rockfield Studios in Monmouth in South Wales, which is where we went to record. We recorded Howling Wind there, did we? The Rumour recorded its first album there, Rumour by itself. We'd done 2 or 3 albums, and Dave has a history with the studios as well, and so. At one point, we supported and backed Dave on a tour. I think Nick persuaded him he should go and gig, and he taught me how to play Chuck Berry rhythm guitar, which is not as easy as you think, and almost everybody I know gets it wrong. But he showed me, so I think it was just because we knew each other and got on well, and he got excited, and and so he produced it.
Yeah, really good polished production sound on that one, on that album. I like the album though. And it's great to hear the original version of What's So Funny About Peace, Love and Understanding.
Yeah,
And I really, it's beyond me. I can't believe that didn't chart, that version.
I know, it's amazing.
Because it's not that different from Elvis Costello's cover. I like parts of it better than Elvis, but you know, it's wild how, you know, whatever, a couple of years later or whatever.
Well, when you listen to things that are have charted over, so I'm 75, so I've been listening to music for 60 years, more than 60 years,
Yeah.
and I've heard an awful lot of records that I can't understand how they've charted.
Right.
And then a whole lot of records and bands who have not been successful, nearly as successful as in my eyes they should be. And so I can only think of one word that's the answer to that. And that is, the other thing you need apart from anything else is luck.
Yeah.
So if somehow some things just don't happen, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, the 500,000 people that are going to buy your record were out looking for a record 6 months before yours came out, so they bought something else. You know, it's all kinds of things. And yeah, sometimes that, you know, you think, okay, well, that wasn't good enough, clearly, let's try and make a better record. But what's so funny about Peace, Love and Understanding? I mean, so I don't understand why everybody isn't singing it all the time, because it's so relevant and so has been relevant. What's that right now? What is so funny about Peace, Love and Understanding? Right. People would stop bombing each other. We might find out, you know, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, the same thing, and I want to get to this in a little bit, but Storm in the Hills, same thing with that song. It needs a wider audience. More people need to hear music like that, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I remember when I was 15 and I started writing songs. I used to write a song. Probably 50% of the songs I wrote had love in them, quite a lot. And but every now and then I would come up with a line or a song that was vaguely political or, you know, vaguely complaining or what have you. And in those days, lyrics were really important. I would never have dared to sing my lyrics live for quite a long time. And even now, I write a song and I play it and think, is this really any good, or am I just, you know, trying it on? Is this good or is it not? So, and then hardly anybody I've been interviewed lots and lots and lots of times in the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. And hardly anybody has talked to me about my lyrics, which is kind of worrying, because you know, I think, well, they don't want to say they don't like them. And you're up against serious people. You know, you're up against Dylan. You put a record out that you wrote. You're up against Dylan, and then you're up against Brian Wilson, and then you're up against Paul McCartney and John Lennon, and all of the thousands and thousands of dynamite songwriters you're up against them. You're in there, being judged and torn apart, and the rest of it. But it's a worrying thing. But I'm just surprised. So Storm in the Hills is one of those songs. Why didn't anybody talk to me, ask me an example? So I've got my records here, but otherwise I forget about them. Crazy World.
Well, this is. I'll go ahead and mention one of the lines from that. I especially like the line, "If you stop to take a break, you might catch a glimpse of what you're running from.
Yeah,
You know?
if you stop to take a breath. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's an interesting that you picked that line
Yeah.
to talk
Yeah.
about, because
Yeah.
it's got to be me, it's got to be you. Hell yes, everyone. Someone's got to do it because it's got to be done.
Right.
That is, that's not joking around, although it has a Dylan flavor to it. But I'm not joking around. If we don't do something soon, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And you've only got to look out the window where you are in California, and there's evidence. It's right in front of us now. We're not, and but nobody's picked up on that. That song is a protest song.
Right.
I'm proud of it because it's a protest song. It actually says the stuff about politicians. If you don't mean what you say, how can you say what you mean?
Right.
That I'm not being nice. I'm trying to be pretty nasty.
Cut to the chase. I mean, it's hard hitting, but again, I think it's what more people need to hear, And so I hope, through people, hearing the song on the internet and just, start spreading the word, that song, needs again, a larger audience, needs people pay attention to music like that. Yeah. And I also like the videos was done quite well on that too.
That was in lockdown. That was my favorite local pub. He put a big tent up so that people could be outside and still drink, but then it got locked down completely.
Right.
And he let us go and run around in and outside of his big tent. Yeah, it's supposed to be hard hitting, and so another example is Crazy World. That's so I picked up my pen to write a letter to a friend of mine. Okay, that doesn't mean that at all. That means I picked up my iPad to send a mail to some nurses in a hospital.
Right.
That's what that is. You can't write, I picked up my iPad to send a mail to some nurses in the hospital. You can't say that. So I wrote it as, I picked up my pen, which doesn't mean to say that I picked up my pen. It means that I picked up something with which I could communicate. Right. That's what I'm saying. And somebody wrote a really nice review. An English guy wrote a really nice review and a little interview I did with him, and he said that it was nice that I was worried about a friend of mine, and I felt like writing. I said, look, I'm not worried about a friend of mine. I'm worried about the NHS, which is going downhill and people are dying. When did you last look outside? I was speechless.
Yeah. You'll always have people that just miss it. It goes like this.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
But,
a lot of those people, I would say, buy a Randy Newman record and listen to somebody who can not write about what he's writing about. Right. Can fool you into thinking. So when he says, "I don't like short people," he doesn't mean I don't like short people. He's just writing a song. It's
exactly. Well, you got to challenge the listener too. I feel, you got to make them think, But it's a beautiful song, Crazy World. I love just the piano and the strings. I like that. It's really, really pretty song. Can we jump back real quick? I wanted to back to the new favorites. Ever Since You're Gone, the great R&B track. It reminds me of Boz Scaggs a little bit. Do you hear that? Can you hear that?
I don't.
You're not a fan of Boz Scaggs.
I don't. Well, I don't know. You can only listen to. So I I've been hooked up for a whole decade on one Steely Dan album where I could not listen to anything else particularly. I put stuff on. So my favorite band album is Stage Fright. But when I heard Two Against Nature and played it 6 times in the first day I bought it, I couldn't listen to Stage Fright. I couldn't listen to Feet Don't Fail Me Now by Little Feet. And talking about Little Feet, I have no idea why Little Feet aren't a huge band, even in rock things. But people don't get it, you know.
Love Lowell George. Yeah. Such a shame that when he passed. Yeah, that's great material. In fact, I have like a box set of their Little Feat's first 4 or 5 albums. Yeah, great stuff. The another track on there, The Look That's in Your Eye Tonight, is like an old country and western song. I know some of the older singers and more contemporary singers that would kill for a song like that. Yeah.
Yes. So what about the Love in Your Eyes? That's on Unexpected.
The Love in Your Eyes, another one. Yep, another one.
Yeah.
Right. See?
Yes. Find me a country singer who wants a song.
See, another one that that somebody else would definitely want to cover, you know. I think. And then we also have, wanted to ask you about this. I Like You, I Don't Love You. Another great R&B kind of track. I was wondering, did Paul Weller of Style Council ever approach you about covering that track?
No, I don't think so. No, but he would have approached Nick, but Nick has never said anything. Yeah. So what Paul Weller did do is he wrote a song which turned out to be quite like Surrender to the Rhythm.
Okay. Because I could see.
So, I don't know about.
I could see the Style Council doing that. I Like You, I Don't Love You. I could see that one. And then talk real briefly about the band calling it a day in '75. The reason or reasons.
Nick just came in got up one morning, and we all sat down and said, "I'm leaving. I think we should quit." Mm-hmm. He hadn't said anything to me anyway up until then, and that was it. We just split up, and pretty quickly we'd sold off the stuff that we could, shared out the rest, and gone our separate ways.
Yeah, I think
but Nick, you know, looking back on it, so being in a band, especially where you live together for 5 years and do everything pretty much together, splitting up is really not pleasant. It's like, you know, losing a family.
Right.
And I didn't do anything at all after that. We tried to. My family and we tried to move into a little prefabricated house in Chelsea that nobody was living in, and Chilly Willy, a band called Chilly Willy, lived sort of 4 doors up and sort of helped us get in. And we cleaned it, spent 2 days cleaning it, everything, got the locks changed, and 3 days later the council came round and turfed us out and wouldn't give us anywhere to live. So the only thing we could do was, once again, my parents helped us. So we went and lived with my parents. And I did nothing. And then one day, Dave Robinson phoned up and said, "Got this guy who writes songs, I think you'll like it. Martin and Bob are coming, and a couple of others. Do you want to come up and play on the demos? I think you'll really enjoy it." So I said, "Yeah, I haven't got anything else to do." So I went along, we played. We talked about it afterwards, and Brown Park and the Rim happened.
Yeah.
So,
good.
and that's happened to me, you know, quite often when something goes down. Instead of rushing around trying to find something else to do, I've just carried on and scraped through however I could, and then something turned up. Yeah. Like when Graham Parker packed in 1980.
Uh-huh.
The Rumour carried on. The four of us carried on playing. We made an album. We toured, did some playing in America and Canada and England, and then that was it. It sort of ran out of steam, and so we packed up, and I did nothing, just hung out, and then our American agent, Alan, I was talking to him, and he said, and I said, I've got to be in America. I don't see me getting in a band in England. And he said, well, come over, and I'm just changing my New York address. I've got a loft space. Spent 8 weeks living with Alan in his lovely house in New Jersey, and I'd go in with him into the city every day, and I turned this loft into an office suite. I did the electricity and ceilings and built walls, fitted doors, all of that stuff. And before I came back, he and Graham had lunch trying to decide on a guitar player for Graham's new band, who are all American band. And Alan said, you know, Brinsley's in town, don't you? And Graham said, really? And Alan said, yeah, and he's up for it. Yeah, that's what he wants to do. That's why he's here. And so Graham said, okay, let's go. So I got, in 1981, I got to be Graham's guitar player and co-producer. I produced Mona Lisa's Sister by myself. He said, you're the producer, do whatever you want. I won't complain. We'll just do it the way you want it. Yeah,
that's a good album. That is a good album.
Yeah. So for another 8 years, I played with Graham, recorded and toured, and in between times, I worked fixing people's guitars in their guitar store.
Okay. Well,
which I did until a couple of years ago.
Yeah, the talking about Graham Parker and the Rumour, my favorite album, Squeezing Out Sparks, and so many great tracks on that one, but the one that I wore out is Discovering Japan. You know, I just played that. That was like, I just cranked it up, and it was one of those songs that I just liked everything about the energy, everything about that song. But I know that you did a cover off of Tangled, Love Gets You Twisted.
Love Gets You Twisted, yeah, I did.
Yeah, yep. So there you go.
Yes, that's one of my two favorites. So I'm covering I'm halfway through another album, and I'm covering Watch the Moon Come Down on that. Got basic tracks laid down. But yeah, Love Gets You Twisted of one of my two favorite songs. And I thought I wonder if I can do that. Singing Graham Parker songs is not easy.
Right.
You know, finding the slightly off note that isn't off, but you think it is and should be. But I think the bit that I really like about it is repeating the two choruses back to back after the solo, which his version doesn't do, and the twin harmonies. It turns Everly Brothers,
right?
The harmonies,
yeah.
Which I think lends well to the lyric content and stuff. So yeah, and he likes it.
Yeah, good.
How can anything be better?
Well, back a few years. Interesting that you backed Garland Jeffries on his Escape Artist tour. That's one of my favorite albums as well. And it's interesting how many singers around that same time sound so similar. You know, like Garland Jeffries, Elvis Costello, Graham. And are you familiar with the Sports, the Australian band? There's a singer, Stephen Cummings. Check them out. Okay. Stephen Cummings is his name, and he sounds just like that too. He has that same vocal inflection. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess when they find something that works, let's jump on board.
Yeah, well, I think you get influence without even knowing it. You hear something, and it's in your head, and so I write songs, and suddenly I stop and say, okay, this is that song, isn't it? I've nicked this song, and usually you can work your way around it, change a note or something. But writing songs is, you write so that I've just written a new song, and I was forced. Well, I wasn't forced. Turning it off would have meant getting up from the sofa and getting the on-off button. But there was an Ed Sheeran song live at I don't know if it was which festival it was at, but it was live at a festival, and it started off sort of down with just his Spanish guitar and some lyrics, and then the whole world kicks in, and it's off and running, and I don't know how many people were there. 250,000 people, all jumping up and down. The earth must have shook. Yeah, and I thought, is this to do with the song? The cameras were on some of the audience who were singing lyrics and everything, and I thought, right, okay, well, I'll try and write a song like that. Mm-hmm. So I picked up my guitar pretty much straight away and started. And I've written a song which starts very mellow, very down, talking about how people don't believe in love at first sight and stuff like that. And then it winds up into a big chundering thing with a sort of chorus. And so I've finished it. It's written, everything, and I play it every now and then and think, this is nothing like Ed Sheeran. Thank God for that.
Speaking of that, one song, All Day almost sounds like two songs in one. Similar, it's like it starts out really quiet and slow. Is that a ukulele in the beginning?
Yeah, it's a ukulele. Okay.
And then
so that song is about 51st nights, 51st dates. Okay. The movie with Carl. I'll never remember who the people are. Anyway, so it's a nice comical but sad and then happy movie. And so that he the lead guy, he plays this cheeky little song to this woman, and she can't remember yesterday every day, so she gets up, and every day he has to make her fall in love with him again. And on one of these days, he sings this little song to her with this little plunking acoustic guitar. And I picked up my ukulele. I can only play 2 chords on a ukulele. I should practice it more, but I don't. And out came that song. And I tried to write more lyrics. This is only one verse to it, and thought, well, instead of writing another verse, I could sing the same verse over the same tune, but change key and have the band come in. So, and isn't that like I Worry About You Baby with the chops on the snare drum with the guitar, big electric guitar chops, and there's a bit of vocal which is a little bit McCartney-ish. Quite happy that I managed to do that. Yeah, but
it's surprising to me. It's mind-boggling how that from the history of popular music till today, how songwriters like yourself have not trampled on the same territory, not repeated the same songs. You know what I mean? How I know there's only a certain number of chords, on an instrument. So how that blows my mind. How can you compose new material without just redoing?
Yeah, I know it's extraordinary, isn't it? But there's, I guess, 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, and every permutation is a lot. So there's a lot of. But if you so I since I did Crazy World with the string quartet thing, I've got heavily moved by cello playing, and I've started to notice more and more. It's a thing on British TV anyway, and string quartet music being played. You know, there's a lot of programs of people traveling around the country pointing out stuff, and things like that. There's a guy called his name is Portillo. He was a hated politician in Margaret Thatcher's era. He's turned into a really nice bloke. He just loves trains, and so takes train journeys, and the music that goes with him as he's chundering along in his train from one city to another is usually some kind of cello or string quartet music. There's other stuff as well, but I've suddenly got into string quartets, how moving they are. But if you listen to music that's written by composers, you know, people, not songwriters like you know, like most of us, but they're actually composers who know what they're doing. How often you hear something and you immediately click into the song that taken from that little bit of violin playing, and there's a lot.
I'll tell you one of my favorite instruments is the oboe. I guess that's called, is that called a French horn over there?
No. An oboe is a woodwind, I think.
Okay.
French horn is a brass.
Okay, this is an oboe, but you know.
Oboe is a sort of long, reedy type thing.
Yes, I love the sound that comes from that. It's real melancholy, but it's pretty, you know. Going back before I had some other comments on your couple of solo albums, you played Dr. Feelgood's first album, and no offense to you and Brinsley Schwarz, the band, but they have got to be my top pub rock band of all time. I love Dr. Feelgood. Now two of my favorites are on that album, Roxette and She Does It Right. Just had a few comments on. I want to hear your feedback too on your solo albums, the songs that we haven't mentioned previously. How long did it take you to complete the Unexpected, the first album?
Probably about 4 years.
Okay.
But I was recording and touring with Graham during that time, so I would take a few days off at some point to go into the studio with James Hallowell, who I should mention, who's my co-producer. Okay. It's his studio, so I would just, if he had time and I had time, then we'd do a day or so. But what happened, because it was spread over such a long time, I wrote new stuff while I was still trying to record Unexpected, and there are songs left over that you know, I recorded more stuff and then altered what was on the album, because I wanted the new stuff to go on the record. Right. So we'd record another couple of songs which were more time in the studio stuff. So it took about 4 years, spread over about 4 years.
Okay, yeah. I thought it was interesting how the actual song Unexpected was on your second album, on Tangled.
Yes, it's fun playing mind games with people, isn't it?
Right.
Well, so I think considering my situation, so I hadn't done anything since 1989, and what I did, you know, as singing and songwriting, finished in 1981. 78 to 81, the Rumour made 3 albums. I've written stuff and sang and I was the main singer for the last part of it while we toured. So it would be pretty unexpected for me to suddenly come up with an album.
Right.
And so
Hence the title.
it was a good name for the album. And I was aware that there was a song called Unexpected. And I thought, well, if I leave Unexpected off the first album and put it on the second album, then that would be things that people could talk about.
Right. And it's unexpected. It's unexpected.
It's unexpected. And since all that time ago, which is quite a long time ago now, since I've used the word unexpected, you'd be surprised, amazed at how many times unexpected is said in general. It's all over the place. I'm thinking, yeah, that's right, go buy it. I'm not talking about it, go buy it.
Right.
But yes.
Well, I like the general mood of the whole album. I do. And your voice is in fine form. You sound like a youthful Brinsley. It sounds like you're much younger. You don't smoke, do you? You smoke?
No.
Okay.
No.
That may be part.
I did for 4 years, a long time ago.
Okay, because you don't have that raspiness at all. You know what I mean? The hoarseness that people that smoke. So it has more of a pure sound. It's a great, like I said, a younger sounding voice. If you heard it and didn't know your age, I think a lot of people would think that you were quite a few years younger. So that's that's what comes across.
That's either a good thing or a bad thing. So if you're trying to get hoarseness in your voice, and you don't have it naturally. So what I find is if I sing quietly and low, so my voice has dropped at least an octave since 1981. Since later than that, since I stopped recording with Graham in '89, I've lost an octave up. So my voice is lower, and if I sing more quietly, so don't try to push it, then it's natural. I have a natural kind of throat raspy. It's not super. But recording it is a different thing altogether. But luckily, James Hallowell, my producer, is a fanatical tube microphone fan. Okay. So he has this bunch of old 40s, I guess, pre-war tube microphones that are Neumann's, but from when Neumann was an East German company. Neumann were situated in East Germany during the war, and then when the war finished, they were situated in a position where, if they were quick about it, anybody wanted to go west could. It was really close by. So there were two brothers. One stayed in East Germany, and the other one went to America. The American one makes Neumann microphones in America. Okay. And his brother makes Neumann microphones in what was East Germany, and is now part of Germany again. But so the new guy went through technological advances, so everything's solid state now, has been for a long time, and his brother carries on making tube microphones, and tube microphones are beautiful sounding things. So they compress. So if you sing really close to them, they compress and break up in a really musical. It's like guitar amps and stuff. If you've got tubes involved, then it's always a much nicer, much more giving and able to track a performance than newer stuff, which will sound broken if you push them too far, whereas a tube mic will just compress. And that is the sound that microphones made in the 40s and 50s. So when you see a big band with 3 girl singers in front, and there's one, maybe on phone for the band and for the 3 girl singers and the guy that does the announcing everything, and it has that rich broken up sound. That's tube microphones.
Wow, see, that's something I didn't know, and I think a lot of the viewers won't know that either. But nice history.
So you have to be dedicated to these. They cost a fortune. You look on eBay for an old Neumann Vale microphone. They're very expensive. But so what I have at home is I have an inexpensive, a Rode 2. It's like a Neumann, looks like a Neumann. It's a sort of copy. It's not expensive, it's cheap, but I have a Universal Audio valve preamp, tube preamp, valve tube mic preamp. Universal Audio made the desks that Pet Sounds was recorded on, Neil Young recorded on a Universal Audio, and the guys, they went downhill, went out of business, but his 2 sons or cousins have started up again, and you get Universal Audio stuff, and it's made like it used to be made in the 50s. So I'm moving. That's the best I can do. I saw that on eBay for 600 quid and just drove off. So, anyway.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. I always enjoy hearing that. The history, and especially with the instrumentation, and where all of that originates, and I mean, people are always trying to improve, throughout history, I'm sure, on the sound and the acoustics and everything. Just Surrendering is a great opener. That song gets you right away. Nice track.
Good, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Now probably my favorite one on there probably is You Miss Again. Really pretty track. I like the guitar in that one. I think that one could be a single. I think it's got if we're talking about singles anymore, I think it's got hit material, on definitely on that track. That's a great one.
Do you know what that's about?
What is that one about? Tell me.
That started off being about a footballer, a soccer player.
Okay.
Who his name's Emil Heskey. He played for Liverpool and England. Liverpool, my team, and England. And he had a couple of years where he was just on song, and then it all went downhill, and things went bad to the point where you could be watching the game on TV and you'd have to jump up and shout, "No, in between the posts, not over them." Please. He just lost the plot. So hence You Miss Again. But then as it progressed, the idea progressed, I realized I was really writing about anybody who tries and fails but gets up and tries again. So it's about anybody, but at the same time it's about Emil Heskey. I was going to call it You Miss Again, and then in brackets say Song for Emil, but I chickened out.
What was the real famous football player, George? What was his name? The Irishman.
Best.
Yeah,
Best. George Best.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love entering arguments about who's the greatest footballer ever. And they talk about Messi and Pele and all these people. George Best. And I say, no, George Best was the best footballer. And everyone looks at me as I'm barking mad. But he was dynamite. And so underused because he was Northern Irish, so he couldn't play. He never was in a World Cup, but he was. And he's a Manchester United player, which I shouldn't talk about at all.
Well, another track on the album, "Feel Like This," and it's probably because of the sparseness in the guitar. It reminds me a lot of Chris Isaak's "Wicked Game."
Okay.
Yeah, you hear that maybe, but I like the mood that song creates.
Yes, that's a very sad song.
Yeah, I can get that feeling from listening to it.
Yeah.
The "Love in Your Eyes," is that a steel guitar in that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, steel guitar.
You know what it reminds me of?
What?
Sleepwalk by Santo and Johnny. Remember that
Oh,
one?
okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So I can't remember his name. He plays with the Waterboys.
Mike Scott? Not Mike Scott. He's the singer.
Yeah, no. He plays guitar and pedal steel.
Okay.
And it's on the album. I should have cracked the album open. I've got one with a thing in it. So when we were doing that in the studio's in near Richmond in southwest London, and we were recording it, and it was getting on in the day. And I said to James, what we need here is a pedal steel solo. And James said, oh, I'll give whatever his name is, which I'm about to find out, a call. And the guy said, yeah, I can come down now if you like. Melvin Duffy.
Okay.
Is his name. And as it says on the album, who was jet lagged, having just got back from the US, but came and played beautiful pedal steel. So he just landed from the US, and he got a cab to the studio and played on that track.
Wow.
Him and the other guy is Ralph Salmins, who played drums. We just James and I just started. Suddenly we decided, okay, we need to put drums on all of this now. Who do we get? And I was thinking of giving Pete Thomas a call, and James said, I'll call up Ralph and see what he's up to. So James said to Ralph, are you busy? Can you come down anytime soon to put some drums on Brinsley's tracks? And Ralph said, what, Brinsley Schwarz? And James said, yeah, Brinsley, he's here recording an album and we need drums. And Ralph said, okay, well, I can be there in 40 minutes. So we said, yeah, great, okay. So he came down and he recorded the drums on that album, all of them in one hit. And what had happened was that he and his family were going on holiday to Italy. And he packed his family off down to Heathrow to get the plane to Italy, came and recorded, and then got a late flight to join his family in Italy. Yeah. What a guy. And
what a trooper. Yeah.
So he's been lovely. He's on some of the later stuff as well. But I played a bit of drums on this. So I played drums with my hands.
One like that. Yeah. Well, one.
I can do it. I can do everything. I can play drums, but I can't use sticks. It's awful. I go out of time and drop them and stuff. I'm awful. What did I play on? I played on Second Best drums, and on Waking the Dead, Looking Here to Stay. I played drums on 3 or 4 tracks with my hands.
Just by hands. Well, one last song off of your first album, Seal It With a Kiss.
Yeah.
Again, there's that south of the border kind of sound. I think this song would be great in a soundtrack to a Western movie, cowboy movie, Western.
Oh, okay.
I think it would, if there's any people biting out there, I think it would work well in a Western movie. Yeah, Feel It With a Kiss.
Okay, just so that you know how songs arrive out of the most bizarre situations. I've spent 30 years of my life being a guitar repair person. I've fitted guitar repairing in with playing and recording. I'm very lucky with the people who employed me. And so when you fix a guitar, you have to play it. You play it before you start fixing it, and then you play it after you fixed it to make sure that it's all okay. And so you tend to have these pet little phrases and licks that you play a little bit to make sure that it's in tune everywhere, a little bit to see that it's okay for playing blues on, not going to rattle or anything. And one of the things that I used to play to check intonation, which is it being in tune everywhere, is the opening guitar part to Seal It With a Kiss.
Okay.
That sort of, it's almost orchestral, that the opening part. I use that so often, I just started noodling after it and that song popped out. So yes. And the reason I recorded it was I met James, came to one of the gigs we were doing in town with Grant Parker and Rumour started up again. James came back to say hello, and he said, "You should come down my studio sometime. We could muck around and record some things." So I said, "Well, yeah, I've actually got a song that I wouldn't mind trying." He said, "Well, come down." So eventually I went down, and this was the song that I recorded. And the reason I wanted to record it was my cousin-in-law was getting married, and she was marrying an extremely wealthy Swedish bloke. And what do you give to someone who's very, very wealthy and who can get anything they want? Something that they can't get. So I sent them to Seal It With a Kiss. I wrote it for them, and sent it to them on their wedding day.
Oh.
They danced to it.
I was going to ask. That must have really touched them both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
wow.
it's a cute little tune. And I like it.
Yeah. Well, any up and coming Western movies, you might try to promote that song, and say it would, especially a romance. If there's a romance involved in the movie, I think that song would work great. Yeah. I can hear that. On the your Tangled album 2021, You Drive Me to Drink. I like the song and the video. Showing two Brinsleys. I thought that was neat. That idea. There's actually two of you playing. And I like the guitar solo towards the end of the song. That's well done.
Thank you. Good.
I have to say though that watching the video made me thirsty.
So interesting. My so one of my experiences is that this song got, because it was a single here anyway, got reviewed as a single by an American blogger guy, I think. Maybe it was for a magazine. Anyway, he said in a sort of derogative way that I started the song with and he said who would want to start a song with and so I never replied to it. It's probably a good idea not to reply to criticisms, but and is a conjunction.
Right.
Okay, so it joins two things together.
Right.
So that's exactly what's happened on the record. It just starts in between the two things that were said. So You drive me crazy and you drive me to drink, for example. Okay, that's a perfectly legitimate so, speech thing.
Sure.
And so yeah, so that's what happened to me with that song. I said, God's sake, you can't please everyone at all, can you?
It's not, talking about your grammar, right? It's like, come on.
Yeah, well, I went to a brutal but on the case teaching wise school where if you didn't know these things, you got caned. So you learn them and they stick with you for your whole life.
Right. Well, Stranded is I like your slower, moodier tracks, I have to say. This one picks up a little bit, but it starts out, for the most part, it's a moodier track, and I like that one. That's another really nice track. And then we mentioned Love Gets You Twisted, the cover version. You said Graham liked that.
Yeah, he likes it. Yeah,
he likes it.
Well, he said I like it when people do my songs their way, but I really like it when they change them. So I've changed it. As I said, I left out part after the solo. Screw yourself up. That part I've left that out the second time it occurs on Graham's version, and put the two choruses back to back, which actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Putting them back to back as a whole thing, which I don't think Graham necessarily had realised. I think anybody, I'd never realised until it came up. I came up with and I thought, what if you leave that out, you've got a big hole, you need to put something there. And I thought, well, how about trying those two next to each other? And then I put the Everly Brothers vocal on, and hey, presto, that turned out, I was pleased with that.
It worked out. It worked. Yeah. And then we mentioned, a couple of other songs already, but You Can't Take It Back. Again, I keep repeating that, South of the Border, but we brought this song up earlier too. And the message there, and
so it's kind of because down in Mexico, that the Brinsley song which Nick wrote, that's a sort of happy feel good song. It's about hanging out on the beach, no cares in the world, soft sand between your toes, and no doubt a woman, and it's all nice. So I've used that idea, that's the Mexican-y feel to the song, is supposed to be feel good. It is feel good, but the message is anything but. So it's a feel good song with a kick in the ass message, really, which is a bit sort of Randy Newman-esque, in a way. But yeah.
Well, I think we're kind of winding down, and this has been we've had a good long conversation here. What's on the immediate horizon for you? Is there a new album in the works?
Yeah, so there are tracks. I have 2 tracks which were supposed to be on Tangled, which I moved so that I could put Crazy World and You Drive Me to Stranded and Crazy World were written while I was during the period I was recording. So I wanted to put those on. So there are 2 tracks missing from the album, which are pretty much finished. They're recorded and mixed, mastered. Then there are some tracks which we started recording in the days that we recorded Unexpected, which have a very different feel to most of it. They're more Steely Dan oriented. They have slight jazz chords and stuff like that.
Never get tired.
Yeah.
Never get tired of Steely Dan.
Yeah, no, me either. So there's 5 tracks which are are recorded, and they need a little bit of work doing, but most of it is done. There are 2 tracks that I just wrote that they're not recorded at all, so they'll be completely new ones, and 2 or 3 which are sort of half done. I've laid basic things down and not gone any further with. So there's an album that's more than half done. So I only want to record in James's studio. We get on really well. He knows. He only has to listen to what I'm doing for a couple of moments, and he knows what I'm trying for. And he's very, very good at getting the best out of people. He works you, but without making you stressed. And there's a good pub over the road, so it's good fun recording. So yeah. Ready to, so I've had problems with my ears recently. This one it's like an aeroplane thing. So if I listen to music too loud, so if I'm in a room with a drummer, my ear just fills up, and then I find it hard to be in tune properly. So I'm trying to sort that out. But it's gotten better enough for me to be able to record anyway.
But
James is off playing with the Waterboys for 2 months, so we're hoping to get started in May, and it shouldn't take a long time. We're over halfway there. So, and don't forget this next Christmas. Play this next Christmas.
Okay.
Have you got this?
Okay.
Do you have this?
This Christmas? No, I haven't. I haven't listened to that one. I haven't listened to that.
Okay. There's last year's This Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was out last Christmas, and I've added some stuff, a sax solo, lovely sax solo on it for this Christmas that's just been. So this Christmas, and there's magic in the air. That's so next Christmas, look out for my next Christmas, because I've got a feeling I could put a big band on it, or get Jules Holland's band to play it, or something, or maybe a reggae version. That would be nice. That would be nice. That would be nice. You can make Christmas records all the time, because it's Christmas every year.
Right. That's true. That's very true.
But if you send a message to Ian at Fretsaw, and tell him which records you don't have. Okay, he'll send them to you if I ask him nicely.
Oh, okay. If you ask him nicely, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Brinsley, for this, and for taking time out of your schedule and your life to sit and visit. And I think we covered a whole lot here. I'll go back, and usually takes me a week or so. Usually every weekend, I edit the previous, weekends. So I will let you know once it is edited and I posted it and it's live. I'll let you know that.
Okay, thank you.
And then you can put it on your social media and let everybody know.
Okay, Ian does all of that.
Okay.
I've done this. I'm quite surprised that this worked first time.
Okay. Yeah, it has.
It's sitting on. I've got one of those things that holds the phone on like a mic stand, so I could move around, and instead of
that's what I have. I have like a little tripod kind of a thing over here. Yeah, holding the phone in place. There you go. Yeah. You have to be inventive, right? Yes, exactly. All right. Well, thank you again, Brinsley. So I will email Ian, and I'll let him know when it's ready and all that good stuff.
Okay. Take care of yourself.
Okay. Thank you. You too. All right. And thank you, and best of luck in all things and in your career and going forward. All right.
Thank you. Take care.
All right.